Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, this is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. I have a wonderful guest speaker with us today, Naeem Patel from Hope and Care Community Services.
Hello, Debbie.
Lovely to have you on the show. Yeah, we've been talking a lot recently. We've been helping out some of our clients recently in getting participants, finding participants, in helping them with their vacant properties or their under construction properties. So, we've had a lot of conversations, and I really wanted to get you on to the podcast so that we can hear a bit more about what you guys do. So, let's start off by, if you can tell us a bit about your background, name, and how you got into the NDIS and the SIL space.
Sure. Thanks for having me on your podcast, Debbie. I began my journey on the ground as a support worker back in 2013. Obviously, made my way up, working across different roles within the NDIS. Back then, there was no NDIS. It was under BSQ. I've worked across multiple departments and had insight into the whole disability industry in general. I started Hope and Care organization back in 2017, along with another co-director. We've been providing SIL supported independent living services and all kinds of in-home and community supports. We are quite comprehensive with a range of services. Most SIL supported independent placements are across Southeast Queensland, all the way from Caboolture to Gold Coast down south. And we have worked very hard to spread across our portfolio.
Fabulous. So what sort of participants do you typically support? What is your main clientele?
We've got all kinds of, disability is a very broad
they are.
area. And we've got participants that are complex to high intensity that requires significant amount of personalized, tailored supports, including but not limited to personal care, manual handling, to intense nursing supports, to also participants who have been released from the mental health and have got complex mental health disabilities, so psychosocial needs, participants with acquired brain injury, dementia, and obviously a large majority of them are autistic spectrum disorder as well. So our range is wide.
Yeah, so you really cover. I know a lot of SIL providers might just concentrate on people with psychosocial disabilities or just people with high physical support needs. But you sound like you've got a real range across those.
Yeah, our aim is simple. We want to help people that need help. And you've got the skills and expertise and resources to be able to, expand our range of services. So usually we aren't selective or we aren't focused on just one particular type of support. Because of the clinical model that we have at Hope and Care Community Services, where we work very closely with a behavior support team, allied health workers, and we've got quite a few professionals that have got quite an intensive experience, we aim to pretty much cover most disability.
Fantastic.
Most fun.
So roughly how many clients have you got under your care at the moment?
At the moment, with the Hope and Care, we've got over 100 participants, but they're all receiving different types of services. All participants are receiving supported independent living services. We've got supports coordination wing as well, which was completely independent from our service delivery team. We've got an office in North Lakes where we operate our clinical, division. We've also got, in-home and community supports, so drop-in supports where participants get some assistance with their appointments, with their meetings, and and also some domestic in-home supports as well. We also have clientele that receives only plant management services. That's also, so altogether we are servicing over 120 plus. In terms of a SIL portfolio, we've got about 22 supported independent placements, serviced
Yes.
at the moment.
And within those, how many of those have SDA funding?
I'd say about 7 to 8 of them
Yep.
have got SDA funding. So we do work across multiple SDA providers. We've got partnerships with a few of them. And we've got about 8 to 10 participants.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do you deal with the SDA funding applications?
We do help out. It's very crucial support that participants must require, because whenever we identify that the participant that is receiving care through us but does not have sufficient funding for SDA, our clinical team gets on it and make sure that we collect all the evidence in terms of arranging occupational therapy reports, working closely with behavior support practitioners, and then advocate and work very closely with supports coordinators to ensure that the SDA has been funded. We have had at least 4 or 5 of them in our care that did have SIL support independent funding, but because of the degenerative nature of that disability, we sort of anticipated that, and we worked very closely to secure SDA funding.
Fantastic.
Successfully.
Yeah. And I think that's a journey for a lot of participants, isn't it? That they will be receiving in-home care or SIL care in a SIL environment, but they do have degenerative conditions and they do end up qualifying for SDA.
Exactly. A lot of those participants that you would meet in person may not on the outset look like they do need an SDA because they are quite mobile. But what some people fail to recognize is that the condition, that the nature of the disability that they have might lead to, at some point, require them to live in a specialized accommodation.
Yeah.
And that's something we focused on. So we always plan, because the whole process of, securing SDA funding is quite a bureaucratic one. There's a lot of paperwork and going back and forth and ensuring that they got right supports in time. And we focus on that with the support of our legal team.
Yeah, fantastic. So, okay, obviously you're working in the SDA space. You understand the provision of SDA, i.e. the physical building. From your perspective, what makes a strong working relationship between an SDA provider, i.e. the property manager, and a SIL provider?
The most important thing is that there needs to be an alignment of vision, right? We need to have SDA providers that understand that SDA building is more than just a building. We're dealing with people with complex disability and we're looking for long-term solutions for them. So alignment of vision is a good start. We need to have an understanding where a lot of focus is given to the choice and control of the participant, right? As some may choose to have the family members living in there. Some may want to have their own SIL provider in there. Some may not want support at all, but still have the SDA funding, right? So an SDA provider that is respectful of that and works closely with the SIL provider. Of course, the prerequisite is that they should have SDA funding, but the other factor should not limit them from living in that placement. And that's very important. We've had partnerships with some fantastic SDA providers, and we've been quite successful in strengthening a relationship with them based on this criteria.
Yeah, great. So when you have a participant who either has SDA funding in their plan or it's going through the application, that you may be looking after them or onboarding them as a client in the first place, how involved are you in the selection of the property?
Very involved. We're very involved in the way that we need to first assess the participants' needs and their social connections in line with the placement that's being offered. Last thing you want to see are participants moving too far away from their family members. Of course, no connection, because that can adversely impact their behaviors or disability. Second thing is we need to see whether or not the house is suitable for the participant in terms of their support needs. For instance, someone who's requiring a lot of hands-on support, the different types of SDA. So if someone's got more behavior, let's say for an example, behavioral concerns, and they need a bit more solid structure, it's not a good idea to put them in an accommodation that's got, not tough, robust.
Yeah. So Yeah, and we've discussed this with other providers as well. That a recent episode with I think Catalina from Melbourne, and she says they not often, but they have put robust participants into a high physical support home, which I didn't believe was possible. But if it suits the participant, it can be. So really, it's all about the participant's individual requirements. And robust, we call it a bit of a standalone,
That's correct.
separate type of dwelling, but there can still be some integration between the two.
Yeah. And also the environment plays a big role as well, right? So one person's behavior may be completely different in one environment setting than the other, right? So it's a combination of reasons why a person acts in the way they do, right? So when we look at the reports, some of them are, years ago, done 2 years, 5 years ago. And that might not be the truest reflection of their needs and their behaviors so what we do as a SIL provider is we do our independent assessments and we break it down to the ground level, identifying do's and don'ts and work towards building a person-centered plan with an allied health team who then constantly monitors and reviews those plaques in line with it. So like you said, some of them may have some serious behaviors back then when they were living with a family, but in a different setting, they can be a completely different individual. So the constant review is important. It can go the other way as well. Someone was, in a really good, space, and then suddenly you move them into a placement where they're not having any contact with the family, and now they're reacting in the way that, all they want is to spend time with family.
Mm-hmm.
But they're unable to express that, and then you will see behaviors there as well. So it's important to have a very close monitoring and supervision and work closely with the clinical professionals.
Yeah, and I believe that the OT is generally a pretty important part of the process of selection of an SDA. If the OT goes in and is of the opinion it's not going to work, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
And of course, the family need to, approve that the home is going to be suitable too.
True. And it's not just the OT's report. Their reports are very important and then have, highly regarded within the department. But a SIL provider's input is also quite crucial because they are the ones who work on the ground,
Of course.
and know the participants' behavior in detail as to what are the precursors, what is it that, that might trigger them off, So it's a combination of evidence collected through occupational therapist, a SIL provider, if there's a PBSP practitioner who has been working with participant, and obviously medical professionals, advisors counted highly as well. So it needs to be a team effort.
Of course.
From all the stakeholders.
So in terms of an SDA property from a SIL perspective, how important is the working space for the team? We always hear, yes, an OOA room in an SDA property. It's there. A lot of people just assume it's the bedroom for the carer, which it's not at all. It's the office space for the care team.
Yeah, it's their private space. A support worker who works, let's say, 14-hour shifts, of which 8 hours is supposed to be, inactive overnight, right? It's their own space, and there's information in that particular space where there might be more than one participant, and this might be some confidentiality to something confidential that, should be out of bound for others. So it's not just a, bedroom for carers where they sleep, but also have some information that might or might not be important.
So it's their office. They've got to have, lockable filing cabinets and
medications. So sure, then you want to make sure there's an electronic safe in place. There's a history of a particular person, and it should not be accessible to everyone.
Of course, yeah. We hear about some, and I'm coming from the perspective of someone looking at designing these properties, and we've heard that some new designs are favouring having a larger space for the OOA, i.e. a bedroom and an office, a separate office. Do you think that's really beneficial or not really necessary, or it just depends on the property? And so,
Case to case basis.
Yes.
It's hard to make a blanket statement on it because, there might be requirements for participant to have a separate space to the office. But generally, in my observation so far, decent sized room that can sort of fit in a single bed and
As well as good office space, desks and storage and cupboard.
Should be
Yep.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like I said to you, they might have 3 participants and there might be a lot of paperwork and a lot of
stuff coming or going.
I mean, 2 participants as well. So this one, he kind with each other, you know what I mean? So it all depends on,
The requirements of the tenants in the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what features in SDA homes have you seen that have the biggest impact on participant outcomes, on them having behaviours reduced, just lifestyle improved?
The layout of the house is very important.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very important that the floor plan is designed in a way that, participant gets the sense of, their bedroom being there. Like, their own space. Yeah, a lot of space, and they should have enough room to move around, obviously, and that's an SDA requirement. But also the fact that the room should have enough ventilation and enough floor area for them to be, feel comfortable within that space. And the other rooms of the house that are a bit further away makes them feel like it's their own home, and there's not necessarily a lot of sharing space. So the floor plan is very important.
So the things that we were always preaching about having, obviously every bedroom must have an ensuite. It's not part of the SDA requirements, design guidelines, but it is best practice. But also having extra living spaces.
Extra living spaces, breakout room is very important, especially with robust.
Of course, yeah.
And even with the HPS, it's not such a bad idea,
And with some HPS participants, they might have multiple equipment, different wheelchairs and other equipment, and they need a lot of space just to store that. And they don't necessarily want it in their bedroom, do they? So storage space, not just shelving for storage of equipment and supplies, but storage space for physical equipment.
That's correct.
Larger things.
It is desirable. Although I would argue that most builders may not be, the most houses that I've seen in my experience have not had that provision, but it's certainly a good idea, especially where you've got participants with, some equipment such as electric wheelchair or ceiling doors. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in this period within the SDA property development market, where we have such an oversupply in certain areas, it is more important than ever for people who are building and designing these properties to find ways to future-proof property and to really go for best practice and best design. And we've been talking about this for a few years now, what best design is. And that this is what we're saying: larger spaces, more storage spaces, extra living spaces, and those are really the rooms. Those are really the main things.
That's correct. Because look, it's not just about the building. It's about 3 people with special needs residing in that accommodation, each with their separate needs and behavior assistance, right? So it's important that from SIL's perspective, it's important that the design of the house is more assistive, if anything, because there would be times where as a SIL provider, we'd have to work very hard. And as you know, with NDIS, there's not usually, funding funded for this. It's usually 1-3. So it's important, like for instance, in one of our placements, we've got a participant who's got dementia and requires constant supervision because of the needs, right? Whereas the other one's a bit more independent, but still requires a bit of assistance. So it's important that the house is designed in a way that's not too intrusive for especially in common areas. So that's something to be considered.
Yeah. And so have you got any specific case studies where you have seen a participant's situation improve drastically?
Oh, yes.
Moving into a good designed SDA?
Yes. Well, without giving the details away, we've had a lady living in a SIL accommodation that we will provide in Suffolk. We have one. She came to our care in 2022 with advanced dementia, right? Extremely high needs, very hyperactive, constant moving pace, back and forth, difficult to manage, right? We identified the needs. We put in really, trained and skilled workforce in place, and we worked very closely and secured SDA funding. With the help of the medical team, as well as the consistent team of support workers, and a lot of credit goes to the house coordinator who's managed that. We were able to secure SDA funding, and now she's placed him on the SDA accommodation and has been quite happy since. So there are areas where we can make significant impact because she came out from the mental health board. So very difficult where she came. That's the core vision.
So now she's living in her own
home, and the family is happy.
And she's a lot happier.
She's a lot happier. She's got her own beautiful room set up. Most days she's quite engaging, and her, she's good, well managed medically as well. So it's something that we take pride of, and that's what we want to see for most people with disability.
Yeah, and look, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
What it's all about, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So how do you support participants to transition into an SDA home?
So we've got quite a structured process there. So we have to firstly identify their needs, right? We have to see what level of care that they are funded, as well as what their requirements are. A lot of the times we see discrepancies in there, because when we look at a participant, we go, oh, the needs are a lot higher than what.
And I guess then you're involved in doing a change of circumstances and getting the funding up.
We have a transferring conversation, because when we onboard a participant, we want to make a difference. We don't just want to add a number to our clientele, right? So if we identify in the first meeting that the needs are a lot higher, we would then communicate that to support coordinators or the other stakeholders and say, if you want us to provide quality supports, this is the level of support we feel is required. So are we going to work on the change of circumstances? Is there any way we could work towards finding out, some way where it's also not depleting the participant's plan, but at the same time to be the right support. So that's very important. That's the assessment we have to do. Once that is out of the way, then we follow a meet and greet process. In a lot of cases, when we identify a property that's suitable for them, we communicate with the existing participant who's living there and the stakeholders and gain consent for them to have a meet and greet with the other participant that's going in there. We have multiple meet and greets if required. Sometimes one is enough. A lot of the time we need multiple in the home setting as well as out in the community. Then we also try and get as much documentation as we require from the stakeholders, such as our OT reports from the previous provider. If they are moving from one service to other, we would require reports from the previous provider, especially incident reports, just so we have an idea about the behaviors and the support needs. We also have to keep into consideration the behavior support needs. So a lot of them might come with restrictive practices. Now, you have the situation, we often face this as a SIL provider, where we've got a participant fairly independently in the SIL home, does not need any restrictive practices, but the other one that's coming might have some love cakes and tours. So if you want to make sure we appear the one that's not, that does not require those sort of practices. So we have to work closely with the behavior practitioners, organize training for the staff, and find a way that both participants feel like whole and they're safe at the same time, which is the biggest challenge for SIL providers.
I can imagine that just participant matching. The property owners really are surprised, I think, when they get a first participant in the home, and then why is it so hard to get the second or the third if there's more rooms? Because these participants have such diverse needs, requirements, matching those as well as the personalities.
Personalities, right.
Is a really difficult part of the process.
It is.
And that's why it takes so long.
It requires a lot of knowledge into this and experience, because you want to help the participant finding their home, but you also want to do it in the way that is not too difficult for the one that's already settled in there.
Absolutely.
You want to disturb their routines, because you put in a lot of work to settle that person there, right? I'll give a classic example, case study. We've got a participant in a house that's got Prader-Willi syndrome, so there's no sense of how much they should be eating. Whereas the other one's underweight. So the family says constantly make sure that, she's eating well, and the other one, she should be restricting food. And that's a proven restrictive practice. How do you work with that? In one of the SDA houses, you've got a participant who is at risk of absconding because of their disability, whereas the other one needs a free access to move in and out as and when they want. How do you work with that? So that's where a SIL provider's expertise comes in place. And that's where we're proud to say we're a bit different than others, because we know how to go about organizing these somehow.
So that really answers my next question, which is what are some of the key operational challenges that you face? And that's literally it.
That's just one of them.
That's just one of them. So what are other ones?
Oh, funding.
Of course.
That's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. Okay, off you go, Naeem.
Yeah, funding. Funding often is a challenge for a SIL provider. Being a SIL provider isn't easy because you're taking a lot of deficit to be able to make difference to this, vulnerable people that you're supporting. A lot of the times in a lot of our placements, we've got a full placement available. Someone comes and says, I've got the participant who's waiting to be released from the hospital or wants to change SIL provider or wants to, whatever reason they want to move, but they've got 1 to 3 funding. Now we've got a house with no participants in there. We're expected to provide supports, but cannot charge more than 1 to 3. A lot of work is put into organizing a team, making sure the house is ready for them to move in. And then, then you're supposed to be charging 1 to 3, which is fair enough if you look at it in one way. But then until we've put the second participant or the third one,
you're operating at a loss, significant loss.
Okay, which most stakeholders hate to say this, but turn a blind eye because it's not easy until we get the second and the third participant. It's not going to be a viable solution. Some organizations aren't able to afford it all. Some of them can because of depending on how big the organization is. But it's the biggest challenge, funding, right? A lot of the times, the funding that's been given is due to lack of representation.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough representation or evidence.
Because for that representation, for the work that support coordinators and other specialists need to put in, that funding has to come out of the participant's plan. And if it's not there in the first place, they don't have enough support to get the right support. Yeah. It's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it?
Catch-22, and we have in cases where we identify that the funding is not adequate to meet the support needs, we've taken stern approach and said, look, for us, it's a duty of care to ensure that the participant is safe. All right. And when it comes to making a decision whether A or B, we always go with the one that is the safest approach. Because if some misadventure happens, we are at the
you're liable
at the wrong end of it. So we want to make sure that we put that concern forth and work with them. And there are ways to work with them. And there's a scope for a lot of education with a lot of support coordinators that there is a way, even though someone's got 1 to 3 funding on their plan, there is a way for them to be receiving support because, there's ways you can work closely with the SIL providers, you can gather enough evidence and go, let's say 6 months down the track and say the participant requires more funding.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is that, there needs to be a collaborative, strong communication, transparent exchange of ideas and a plan to work together on this.
Yeah, look, a lot needs to be changed.
A lot needs to work.
There's a lot going on at the moment in the industry, and a lot of it comes down to the inadequate funding.
Yes, that's a major challenge.
It is. There's so many providers are really struggling,
and it's not easy, man. And I wonder, what's the solution to this?
Yeah. Well, that leads me on to the future of SIL. How do you see the future of SIL services evolving within the SDA framework?
Before NDIS came, there were a significant number of people still living in a 24/7 care, right? There are participants, they do require 24/7 care and aren't suitable for, for the normalized housing or with their families that might have the different dynamics of the families. So there is a section that will still need that support. So I do not see them being, put out of the disability system. So SIL will be there. There might be a bit more scrutiny around the ones that may have scope or possibility to maybe go, step down model from, let's say, SIL to a bit of an ILO, some informal supports. But it's a major project. It's something that I do not foresee happening, and I could be wrong, the next, at least 5 to 6 years. So SIL in general has a future because of the disability of some individuals. There's still cost-effective solution than being at the hospital.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
So when government looks at it, I feel it's still a more viable solution.
Yeah, and obviously, the vast majority of participants with SDA funding also have SIL funding. And the two go so hand in hand together, and yet they're quite distinct.
They're quite distinct. I've seen cases where participants have really high needs, not funded enough. And I've seen the other side of it as representation is very important. It depends on the right support coordinator who advocates their interest, and ensures that, all the boxes are ticked. At the end of the day, NDIS, when they're deciding, they just have to tick boxes to say, this is provided, that is provided, and enough evidence there. So representation is crucial, and the people that are working with you should have the insight into it to be able to, So there's a lot of scope for training.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness, there certainly is. Talking about representation, we know that there's going to be changes coming into place around the whole support coordination and the navigators. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm a bit skeptical, if I could be completely honest, because it is a good idea. The idea is great, but it comes down to the people that are taking that responsibility.
Is it really nothing much more than changing the name from support coordinator to navigator and needing them to have more training and experience? And
I'm afraid I do not have enough information to have a, opinion on it. I would like to see it come first, and then obviously, but the idea is great.
Yeah.
Navigator, but they've been speaking about it for a while now.
They have, yeah.
And in the current system as what we've got right now, there's been challenges around, representation and a high turnover of, support coordinators going in and out, and it has been challenged as is.
I mean, yeah, sure. It was part of the 5-year plan after the review, so it might still be a way off.
And a lot of support coordinators and the companies that are providing those services are stricken down because there's been no changes in the, and their hourly rates.
The fundings that they get, yeah.
All the inflation and everything else, it's no longer, you might have heard about Mercy being one who shut down their whole support coordination division.
Yeah, there's been a lot of organizations leaving the industry, shutting down.
Not viable for them anymore because you've got to do the pay increase for these support coordinators every year, but you can't claim more. So who's going to take?
Yeah, and we got the new funding, the annual price review coming up. I wonder if there's going to be much of a change in that.
Well,
I mean, obviously everyone will hope so.
If their plans are on to, transitioning support coordination to navigation, I'm afraid we won't see any change.
Yeah.
But
there's still, I think the NDIS is still in the phase of cutting costs where they can. So it doesn't look good there.
Early model, you might have heard of.
Yes, that just came out a couple of weeks back, wasn't it? That now payment participants' plans, the funding lasts for 3 months, and then I'm not quite sure how that will work, but it's updated every 3 months, or the money goes into their account every 3 months, and they can only, if they overspend, they got to wait until the next time period. Is that sort of how it
From
works?
what I understand so far, there's going to be a quarterly block of funding for.
Yeah, that's right.
And if some of them is obviously not used for whatever reason, obviously it adds on.
It rolls over until the 12-year period is what.
But not after 12 months.
That's right.
Current system, they're just breaking it down.
Into the every 3 months.
Just to give a better.
I mean, I think that's actually good.
It's good in a way, but it also a lot of administration for
True.
all the people involved. So it's adding cost in one way, but it
also protecting participants in one way from overspending in any one quarter.
True, sir. So
and having nothing left.
Support coordinator now the NDIS would say, hey, just be careful. You've been going too fast.
Yeah. But that's going off on another tangent. A couple more things I was sort of wanting to touch base with you on, and that was the SDA design guidelines for the construction of the homes. Nothing has changed in those guidelines since they came out in 2019. And we know that there was a funding increase back in 2023, which changed the SDA funding quite significantly for different categories. Is there anything that you feel within that SDA space, any improvements or innovations to either the design of the design guidelines or within the funding framework?
I feel our SDA design standards are
pretty good.
Pretty good.
Okay, good.
Nothing that I can think of.
I mean, obviously the guidelines are bare minimum. We know best practice is another story there. We've already sort of touched on that.
Yeah. I would certainly limit the number of SDA houses approved within the area to sort of address the issue of oversupply, which might not be a great.
How do you do that?
It's tough. The limit there has to be a
I know.
yeah. So that way, the investors aren't shown unrealistic pictures, because what's been happening recently is that there's not enough education around. And I've seen your website. There's quite an information on the website where you've broken it down into different areas, which one's got more supply. And that's something that most people should be aware of. So whoever's listening, please go to NDIS Property Australia website to gain better understanding of.
Yeah, we do always try and put as much information as we can out there. People do need to understand how it all works. But I think and we're always talking about the supply and the demand, and wishing more people would look closer at that when they're looking at building or buying or developing. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't. They still get sold the dream. It's changed a lot in terms of funding limitations. Is going to make a big change to the future development. However, the NDIS put the whole SDA world out there to private enterprise to develop the market. And there are
we've got data in front of us. These are the number of people that are funded for SDA within this region and that. And I think it won't be such a bad idea, annually, this many houses are approved for this region, just to give in.
But who does the approval? The properties go to construction. They have to get a pre-design certification. They have to get a post-construction certification. And then that information is submitted to the NDIS to enroll a property. But is the NDIS going to say, oh, hang on, we can't enroll this now because we've already enrolled too many in that suburb?
And then that goes against the fundamental principle.
Exactly. So it is really, really difficult to limit that. It really comes down to the investors, whoever's funding the construction of these properties, to be well and truly aware of where the market stands at any one point in time.
With some indicators for the investors to get and go, oh, probably not this area.
Yeah, well, there are, if they know where to look, and those indicators can be quite limited. We know what the demand is on the NDIS website. The quarterly data provides the supply and the pipeline, but it's over such broad areas. If you're narrowing it down to a suburb and say, what's the demand like in this particular suburb, it's really hard to know. Without speaking to people like yourself, the providers who are enrolling the properties or working in the properties or being approached by owners to tenant the properties. And even then, you've only got a small picture of the, part of the bigger picture because you only know what you know.
You know what you know, Europe.
So it is, I think that's the biggest challenge at the moment the industry is facing in terms of evening out that supply and demand is lack of real clarity around where the supply is. We know what the demand is.
Advertisements for people to, I keep getting them all the time, 18% yield, 20%.
They're still doing it, are they? I know.
Yes.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous. So, look, that's sort of something we're constantly looking at and trying to educate people on is where they should be avoiding, where we still need homes. And that's probably sort of the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is, are you seeing an increased demand for certain types of SDA homes? We know that the demand projections are robust will be about 10% of all participants across the country on average. HPS, I think 20%, FA 30%, but that obviously differs from area to area. What are you seeing in your world?
Accessible is the most commonly seen.
The commonly seen and commonly needed, yeah. I think that is
1 to 3 ratio if you want to go.
Yeah.
So the most commonly seen SDA, in my experience anyway, is fully accessible.
That's what the participants have funding for.
Majority of them. Yeah. And the ratio is 1 to 3.
Yeah.
So 3 bedroom fully accessible. If someone's planning of building one,
go for that. Okay. Yeah. How common do you think it would be for someone with fully accessible funding to have a degenerative condition and need to be in HPS down the track?
It's case-to-case basis, depending on what degenerative conditions. Dementia recently has been seen as one of the commonly seen influx of participants that you see. Okay. but it also depends on many other medical conditions as well. Age is a big factor.
Yeah.
So naturally, age will play its part as well. It's hard. It's hard to say who will. But then obviously, a lot of those SDAs currently in the market are HPS though, because there's not much difference between
That's right. There isn't
provision. So
a big difference. Yeah.
no harm in,
And I think, from the construction side of it, it doesn't cost a lot more to build HPS. And this is why most properties in the country are
HPS.
are being built to that. And, so we don't see a problem with that.
No, there's not.
It does allow that flexibility in the future if required.
And generally, SDA providers are flexible as well. Like a lot of the times you would see them being flexible about allowing participants in their homes which may not have that level of funding.
And the difference between FA funding and HPS funding isn't that great.
Just as a leading rail.
But I mean, in the funding that a participant would have in their plan, it's not that big a difference.
It's so huge.
No.
That's about,
10,000 usually. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think the current status of where we're seeing a big percentage are HPS, it's not really a big problem.
Because in people allowing normal SIL participants in their homes, if their homes are doing vacant for people.
Whole other conversation, and we've had that multiple times recently.
A lot of the guys, the co-tenancy match, like a participant may not have the SDA funding, but it's an ideal match for the one that's living there. For that person, then it becomes a long-term participant.
Yeah. And there's something that actually I was at a conference last week before, a SIL conference here in Brisbane, and I was speaking to someone there who said what they're seeing is, or doing, they might be operating SIL services within an SDA home. They've got an SDA funded participant and the rest of the property is vacant. They are moving a SIL funded participant in and applying for Appendix H for the SDA funded participant to bump up the income to compensate for having a non-SDA funded participant. So everyone sort of thinks Appendix H. Appendix H is not very well understood out there.
It's not very commonly known.
It's believed that it's only for family, but it's not. It's for the participant to share the dwelling with a non-SDA funded tenant, resident. Generally, but it doesn't have to be. So that's another option that can be, if it's more beneficial for the matching of the tenants in the property, they get on well.
And you've got informal support, which then reduces the SIL funding. You don't need to have a 24/7 carers, but they can have someone who's living, they can care for you.
Yeah, so they might need care themselves, but they could also assist in help.
It's perfectly with ILO model because, then you have someone who's going to be your carer as well as your partner. You might not need as much support through carers, and it's your home for life.
That's right.
Yes.
So
only challenge with that to be is that the house should be either 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom. The 1 bedroom is obviously not very commonly seen, but 2 bedrooms. If the house is 4 bedrooms, then you put in one participant with Appendix H, then you'll be struggling to pull out there.
Of course, yeah.
So that's a decision SDA provider has to make.
That's right.
From our point of view, we'll be happy to provide support.
Yeah, but look, it's just another option, and it allows more flexibility in tenanting a property.
These are a perfect solution for them at their houses. And recently we've seen quite a few inquiries come through that have got apartment funder. And I think that's the model with concierge system is perfectly, available.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of other options that we're becoming more aware of, that SIL providers are finding ways to make things work. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you have to.
At the end of the day, most people need to understand this, that the SIL provider's role is only limited to providing care. And we'd be happy to provide that care within your home environment, within an SDA accommodation, or within the houses that might have been, at least by either the SIL provider or other providers. So our aim is to provide quality support. We'll be happy to partner with SDA providers and, help them fill the participants. We're happy to provide that independence within their homes, subject to other criteria. And so that's what our role is as a SIL provider.
Fantastic. Wow, this has been a really good long conversation, longer than I was expecting. I have one last little question for you. I'm still coming across a lot of support coordinators, SIL providers who don't understand SDA.
I'm happy to organize a seminar.
But do you also find Very common. The lack of understanding.
Lack of understanding, lack of experience is mind-boggling. It's very common. Unfortunately, there is no requirement for someone to be a supports coordinator. So, most people are trying their hand on it. And obviously, there are experienced supports coordinators out there, but there's a lot of no training. There's a lot of scope for training and education for them. The struggles are real. A lot of them don't seem to understand the difference between an SDA and SIL. There have been inquiries made to us by a supports coordinator saying, my participant is funded for SDA. Why should they be paying rent? Sort of objection.
And one I spoke to last week was a SIL provider who believed that they needed to get SDA funding. They needed to become an SDA provider to be able to look after their client in an SDA home.
Yeah, so what people need to understand out there is SDA is brick and mortar. It's an accommodation. It's a building, right? Yeah. It's not a...
Exactly, and it's the funding for the building.
SIL is a provider.
And the SIL funding is the cost. The way that I explained it to this provider, and she got it straight away then, was that the SDA funding comes out of the capital funding within a plan, and the SIL obviously comes out of core sports. And when I told her that, I said it's completely different funding. It's managed completely differently. It's operated completely differently. Kind of the penny dropped. But it highlighted to me just the lack of clear understanding of the difference between SDA and SIL.
True. And the other thing most stakeholders, or in some cases families, struggle to understand is that as a SIL provider, our responsibilities are to ensure quality supports are provided. The building where the supports are being provided may belong to someone else. It could be a private,
individual investor.
It could be an SDA builder. It could be anything, right? And what SIL provider, as a SIL provider, what is claimable for us is the number of hours that's being provided. A lot of the times you would see a lot of expectations from the family members around
income,
around demands, and
around just family members.
Family members that may not be necessarily claimable, but we usually get flexible around it. But sometimes it just the SIL provider is generally perceived to be the one who's landlord and the investor and the funding keeper. And that's the education that's very important, because anything goes wrong. We've had a situation where we had one SIL participant. I know we're going over limit, but I'll probably keep it short. A participant living in an SDA accommodation through other SDA provider. We're providing SIL. He did not pay rent. So SDA provider said, look, you got better connection. Go talk to him. At least he has to pay rent, right? And I said, I can help. I went and spoke to the participant and said, look, rental is something that, you'll have to pay. Not to us. I'm just being a middleman here. Oh, I don't want hope and care. I'm getting out of this house. Oh, it's got nothing to do with us. Yeah, so that
on all levels,
all is understanding, and the provider generally is on the receiving end of criticism.
Because you're working
because we the face of to the support. So.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and look, that's what we're all about: is educating the industry and trying to help the right connections make it all work. Look, thank you so much, Naeem. That was an epic episode. I think there's some really good information come out of that, and I really hope that listeners get more of an understanding on what it's like to be a SIL provider working in the industry and within an SDA home, and just the challenges that you guys face.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for your time today.
Pleasure. Thank you for you.
Okay, and we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.